All right, guys, we're going to bring it right back into talking about muscle contractions because we're going to talk about isometrics. So when we look at isometrics, when we looked at understanding how eccentrics works, well, isometric contractions at the baseline level, actin and myosin, right, is the filaments inside and the proteins inside of a muscle cell that create contractions. Muscle cells then wrapped up to make fascicles. Fascicles make muscle fiber or muscle, muscles essentially, right? Those fascicles get all bunched together to make a muscle. Now, when we look at eccentric contractions, we had that braking force. And when we look at isometric contractions, we're holding force. So if you notice this band that I've got here between my hand, it has tension on it, right? I can pluck it. It's got that little tension there. Our muscles have the ability to hold that tension, right? So actin and myosin aren't braking forces. Now they're just holding, they're locked on, almost like a train car pulling, the train car behind it. Everything's locked together. So when we look at isometric contractions, especially when we look at being able to control forces on our body, when you look at balance and resisting motion, isometrics become very, very crucial. So how does that look like when we actually go into train? So when we have our isometric contractions, we had our eccentrics where we lower. Well, now I can sit there and pause and create a tempo in the bottom movement. Now I can do this with a push-up, I can do this with a squat. It doesn't really matter. Being able to hold tension. Now there is a difference though, and that's the one tough thing you get with isometric contractions, that we actually have two types. So when we look at isometric contractions, we have overcoming and we have yielding. So a lot of times people focus on yielding. Yielding would be resisting gravity. If I were to take that band again and I just stretch it out and hold it, well, my shoulders are holding isometrically to not let that band pull me back in. I'm not yielding to that force that's acting. Now, the other way we can do this, and it gets a little trickier because you're going to need more equipment to do something like that, is what we consider overcoming isometrics. And so a great example here is if I were to get in this lunge position, if I were to just relax right here, I'm just yielding to gravity. I'm not letting my body move. Now, if I sit here and then I decide to say push forward with my front foot, push backward with my back foot, all of a sudden I'm creating tension because I'm not going to be able to friction. All of a sudden is my force. It's not going anywhere, right? Now, yielding, I can still go up and down because I'm just resisting my body's pull on gravity, or gravity's pull on my body. And so the resistance can move until I get to the floor. But at that point, I have the external support of the floor, so I'm going to lose my tension. But we can create extra tension by pushing against something unmovable. Same thing if I were to go to a wall, or if I were to go to, put a bar underneath a set of pins and stand up or try to push against it, I'm pushing against an immovable object. So we consider that overcoming because you're trying to overcome a force that isn't going to give back, okay? The importance in this is being able to, one, create tension, extreme tension, or we call it overcoming because not only are you trying to overcome an immovable force, but you're trying to basically create more tension than gravity can really apply and adjust to. And we look at yielding, being able to understand that we're being able to hold some of that tension, hold some of that against the forces of gravity. So when we look at creating movements, we've talked about eccentric contractions, tendon strength, stuff like that. When we look at trying to create some of those abilities, we need to understand that we can apply this by adding in different types of isometrics so that when we go through stretch shortening cycles, our body starts to adapt. We have an eccentric phase, we can do our slow tempos down, we can then do our isometric phase, we can do tempos and pauses, or even timed pushes against something immovable in order to create some of those tendon health, better tendon health outcomes, and then create some of those better muscle strengths and develop some of the muscle qualities and train specific contractions in order to increase our health and increase our performance. So there's just an overview of isometrics, and then we'll kind of continue those into concentric actions further on down the road.